trying to play jazz. And I have some students that were just kind of in concert band in high school, played maybe in like pit orchestras and marching band, that kind of thing, but didn't really, or no, some of them played in jazz band in high school too. But pretty much beginners. And Albright College is a small liberal arts college. So these students we have music majors, but they're actually music industry majors. There's no performance program for majors. So a lot of these students are like biology majors or math majors, and then they take jazz band, and they have the option to take private lessons too. We have a private lesson program. So I teach piano lessons, and then aside from that, I'm also teaching a pop music history and American culture class. But none of the students in my pop class are involved in the jazz band, so there's no crossover there. So this is specifically for my jazz band students. And let me just pull up the questions. I had them, so since we transitioned to online classes, my main priority has been to keep them engaged, because we can't get together and physically play music together, right? So I've been posting like various articles for them. We use Moodle. I don't know if Hartt uses like Moodle or Blackboard or whatever. There's different online platforms. But we use Moodle, and I posted an assignment for them to watch your gig at Scholars.
Okay.
So they listened to your performance from February 28th with your brother Lucas on bass, Brian Lynch, Tia Fuller, and Ralph Peterson. And then I asked them if they, had any questions that I said I could email you, and we can hope for a response. So super lucky and glad that you're here now, because I can just ask you the question. The first one is from my student Brandon. He is a freshman trumpet player, and he says, "What do you do on days when you're not really feeling it, specifically with improv?"
Yeah, I mean, well, it depends. It depends on if I'm in a performance, or do you think he means practicing? Like when he's not feeling practicing improv? Or just in general?
I think it could mean either.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know if coronavirus had anything to do with this question. We
right.
about how improv is really hard to work on by yourself. And he's very motivated when we're having ensemble rehearsals. So maybe this is related, or just a general question for someone who's a professional. Do you still go through days where you're not really feeling it, but you have to kind of still push through?
Right.
Or
yeah, you're right. When you're at a gig, sometimes you can get away with shorter solos. Sometimes you can, but if you're doing trio, you can't. I think, finding that motivation is important. It's a big part of what we do. I would say it's like, as far as if you're a pianist or a drummer or bassist, the majority of what you're going to do is accompany somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're doing trio, or if you're a saxophonist, the majority of the stuff you're going to do is improv. And if you look at how, the basics of what we do, like bebop, things that are coming out of bebop, you have a head in, then you have your improv section, then a head out. That improv section is what we do. I think when I'm not feeling maybe practicing my improvisations, sometimes you need to find motivation by listening. I think maybe I would refer to some of my favorite recordings, maybe not like something I have to do, but rather something that I really love. Thelonious Monk, maybe Thelonious Monk tune that I know, that I've maybe never transcribed before, something that I know, and just listen to that, find all of my favorite things. I would find the motivation first. And then it probably will segue into you wanting to practice. Oh, I want to do this, because you're finding something that you love. It doesn't have to be jazz. It could be something else. But my point is to spark something inside of you at that point, not to let it linger and maybe try to listen to something you don't want to deal with. Segue. Listen to what you love. get inspired and then move into the next section, which is your work, your studies.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so Brandon, like he just presented his transcription project on Monday, and he did an awesome job. He transcribed a Roy Hargrove solo that he chose himself and was super inspired by. He said he heard it and he was like, I have to learn this. I have to learn the tune and I have to learn this solo. It's just so good. So yeah, finding something that that inspires you, and that's going to be different for you versus the next person, and so you have to find what that thing is for you.
Yeah.
And then he also asks, so we talked a lot, not a lot, but we performed actually around mid-semester. It was one of the first performances associated with the Berks Jazz Fest. The Albright Jazz Band played at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Reading. And we talked a little bit about performance anxiety, because for the freshmen, they had never improvised in front of people before. So his second question is, how do you handle nerves?
Yeah. Well, that's a really big question. I mean, that I'm sure we still deal with that all the time for different reasons. The thing that has helped me the most, if I was to do something that's like kind of like a one size fits all, because it's, like I said, it's a very deep question, would be to be over prepared. So if you're over prepared, then you don't need confidence. And if you don't need confidence, then you don't have to then gain confidence, which is to me the hardest part.
Yeah.
So you can gain confidence, of course, but if you're over prepared and it's like the person that that knows they're going to hit the home run. You train so hard on that one thing. When it's time to execute it, it's just one more time out of the last 400,000 times you did it.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of, let's say it's you have a gig coming up or a performance, and you have 3 songs on that performance, and it's 3 months from now, I would probably, if you're the nervous type, then I would probably say to practice it 4 or 5 times a day, maybe more, 10, 20 times a day, run through every single day until the time of the performance. So by the time you get to the performance, you're playing something like 4,000-5,000 times.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, very cool. The second question is the second person, I should say. This is the third question. Emily is a sophomore bass player. She's new to jazz band. She never played jazz before. She never improvised before. So she had like a half a semester with us before we transitioned online. And she did participate in the Berks Jazz Fest performance I was telling you about at the Crown Plaza as well. She did a great job. She's a beginner. And she says, when learning to improvise, what is one thing you would tell beginners in order to keep them motivated and not disappointed when it doesn't sound the best?
It's like a question I would ask. I don't know. That's another good one. I think, all right. So I tell some of my students, if you transcribe a chorus of Bud Powell, or you transcribe a chorus of Charlie Parker and you play it, you're actually playing at such a high level at that point. So anything inside of that solo, to me, is fair game for you to dissect, grab, and then put in different places. But more importantly, if you were to play many parts of an improvisation of, a great musician in your solo, then what you're playing is going to be awesome. I would look to the masters, look to the people that that have pioneered this music, and just take a little bit of, if you listen to something Sonny Rollins plays, I like that. I like that when he played it on, let's say, Autumn Leaves, the first day. Like, I really like that. then learn what it is. And when you play Autumn Leaves that first day, then you go ahead and play it. And then you have, you know, the idea, you'll know you'll be playing something great. You don't have to think, is this something great? It's going to be great.
Right.
That's one thing. The second thing is, I mean, practice what you can. But then when you get out on stage, I would let a lot of that go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have fun with the drummer, have fun with your bass player. She's a bass player, you say?
Yeah, bass player. Yep.
So you're gonna have fun with the piano player, have fun with the drummer, because if things are a drag to you, if you're like, oh, this is not happening, then the piano player may not have the same feeling as you, but he's gonna know something's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and it just ends up being this weight that brings everybody down. So you don't want to let anybody know. And the way you do that is kind of keep a lot of that out of the bandstand.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, I still would say don't bring it up. There's been many times where there's a musician that says, oh, that sucked. That was the worst we ever played. And, you know, a lot of times I thought it was great, you know, and I'll be the leader of the band at the time. Or they're the leader of the band and somebody else says, wow, that sucked. And I noticed that it changes the perspective that everybody else had of the performance. And same thing with the audience, right? You'll have like an audience, oh, that was great. And then the musician's like, but it wasn't right. You just changed that person's perspective on what you did. And I mean, you may, of course, those thoughts come in. They're gonna come in. It's normal. Just let it come in and let it go out. You know, that's how I would see that.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. Yeah, that's great advice. Emily is transcribing a Sam Jones solo right now on Autumn Leaves, and just she's actually transcribing a walking bass line because she just really wants to be able to look at a lead sheet, navigate the changes, and walk a super solid bass line. So yeah, that's a great answer for her. So the next student, Shelby, actually asked a similar question, so I'm going to skip that. But Shelby is a sophomore trombone player. She just transcribed a couple choruses of Blue Train from John Coltrane's album. And she transcribed Curtis Fuller's solo.
Yep.
Beginner, intermediate, the first transcription she's ever done, and she was super working really hard and super psyched about it. So just a great student with a positive attitude. She says, when learning a new piece, what do you think is the most important thing you should do first?
Listen to it. I would listen to it. You need to listen to it the same way. All right, there's many different ways of listening. So the first thing I would do is I would listen to the melody, and then all the way through. Then I would listen to what I'm learning. You start dissecting. You listen to the melody. You don't transcribe yet, and you listen to the bass. Go through, and then you listen to what the drums are doing. If there's a vocal track, you listen to the lyrics and the words. You do intense listening of what you're learning. The next step, and this is learning a tune, not necessarily transcribing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I personally would learn as close as possible to what the person on the record is playing. I would bypass the music, no matter how how detailed the music may be, written music. It's still just a guide. You want to transcribe the music, internalize it, and then recreate it. You don't necessarily want to transcribe music and then play it note for note, but the best way to do it is to play what the person played on the record. Then from there, your mind is going to navigate and push you to do the things you like the most. So it's going to change automatically. Just let that process happen. But the first step is to listen to it intensely. I would listen to it until I could sing along with the record perfectly what the melody is. And then I would incorporate, if I'm a melodic player, I think you said she's trombone. So then I would then incorporate that. I wouldn't play along until I can sing, the melody first. If this is a new song.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't all have that opportunity and time. Sometimes you have to learn a song for a gig that someone gives you, they put the music in front of you, they're saying learn. I mean, that's a different scenario, but if you have that time, if like, okay, I have a couple days to learn this song,
Hmm.
just put it on repeat, just like you would a pop song. And I think if you notice, a lot of people, they can sing pop songs right with the, with the radio, and they may never own the song. That's because it's on the radio all the time, and they just keep singing along with it. It's the
Yeah.
same rules. Do the same thing with whatever you're learning, whatever you're studying. The only difference with us is that there's a deeper understanding of what's going on. You're gonna know the harmony behind this. You're gonna know the intervals. You're gonna know what the drummer's doing, and then you have to improvise on the chord changes. So the overall sonority of the sound you're gonna internalize as well. So all of this is part of that learning process. But I think I would start there. Listen, learn, internalize, and then play along with. And then I wouldn't venture off to say I have the tune until you can play it just like the record.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. We talk sometimes about like listening to singers, um, who may be saying, like, if it's a standard, the melody is sort of straight, not, don't start with like, Charlie Parker's version, even if that's the version that's inspiring you. Go back a little bit further, get to know, maybe even like something Harold Mayburn taught me was learn the lyrics to the tune, because
Yeah.
there's syllables to the words. So if you're missing part, like a half a syllable, and you're playing the lyric and you're trying to embellish, but that original melody isn't there, and then you're trying to embellish, you're skipping over some
Most definitely.
important parts. So yeah, that's really awesome. Thank you. I have one more. So my last one is from Justin. He is a freshman. He's a drummer. Um, he had experience playing jazz band in high school. So he's not brand new to jazz, but I think maybe new to some jazz improv and just the idea of playing a chart. We read tunes from the real book in rehearsals, and so his question is, what inspired you to be a jazz musician, and what makes you guys, I guess this would be the band, because from the Scholars gig, what makes you guys different from other musicians?
Inspired to be a jazz musician. He said jazz musician, not musician, right?
Yeah, what inspired you to be a jazz musician? Justin
Okay.
plays different kinds of styles, rock,
Gotcha.
So.
When you become a jazz musician, and I never really use that term in this way, because it's a broad term. It really is, and it points out a specific point in our musical history. What jazz, it's going way back and then into the 50s, and then when you get to the 60s, it kind of changes. Everything changes. But when we are in school and you're learning a different style of music from classical music, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a choice of whether you want to really do something that's hard or not. I think with myself, it was a little different. I really didn't take to the music until about my sophomore or junior year in high school. I was playing classical music before that. So I was listening to the music for a long time before that. And I think what inspires you is finding something you like. I used to love Thelonious Monk. Like, I would put on, that was one of the few jazz musicians that I would listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Put on Thelonious Monk, and I think it was because you could dance to it. A lot of his music is very, very danceable. So I'm talking about as a young kid. So as I get into high school and I start playing, you kind of want to do the stuff you like. And that's the reason why I did. It wasn't that I said I wanted to be a jazz musician. I wanted to do, I wanted to play like the people that the music of whom I liked. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us do that. And some people get to see it. Like as I get older, I see other musicians, and I saw you guys in Hartt and things like that inspired us as young students and young kids to do certain things. And if I saw somebody that I really liked in terms of what I liked what they were playing, I would want to do that. I didn't really care about if it was jazz or not. I really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us play lots of different styles of music, and I think what sets us apart, I'm gonna just say, for lack of a better term, you have like really two sects of the music. You have your American classical musicians, like your jazz musicians of American classical music, and then you have like your fusion players and things that kind of branched out of there.
Yeah.
So you know, we all do both, but what sets us apart as jazz musicians as a whole, not just us as a band, is that I feel like we're trained in dissecting music and being able to recreate it in our own way, basically putting our own thing. Jazz isn't necessarily the whole thing. It's like you gut something, and then what we do is then put inside, and that new innards to the music is what they used to call jazz, and that's what Charlie Parker was doing. So I feel like what I do is an extension of that, and I feel like that's what's different about us as a whole. You know, we're kind of like trained in so many different ways of dissecting music, really to like the smallest degree, and being able to you know, flavor it in our own way like it's never been done before. And we can do that to pop music. We can do it to any style of music. That's kind of that's what makes us different than a pop musician. A pop musician wouldn't be able to do that. They're kind of trained in one thing. They're really comfortable somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We have a little bit more elasticity, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we have pop ensembles at Albright, commercial music ensembles. And some of the students, you know, do both jazz and the commercial. But
But you know, I don't want to make it seem like specializing in something like pop music or in any other style. It could be absolutely any style. See what happens when you are in that field. You have to be at the top of your game.
mm-hmm.
You know, jazz. I talk about this all the time with different incredible musicians, and we talk about that caliber of musicianship that goes into being a drummer for certain bands. It's really high in the pop field, but on that certain thing, they don't need you to do, you know, a Brazilian beat.
Right.
You know, they don't need that. So you have to be able to, they want that leading the band, playing everything perfect every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also something that's, in my opinion, is a very highly respected thing. So I'm not trying to say that. I just say the difference is we're kind of a little more elastic than
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you.
not better.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's a great answer. Um, well, hey, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Who knows what will happen with all this coronavirus stuff, but if
Yeah.
you should return to the Berks, you know, Jazz Fest next spring, 2021, I'm hoping that we can have you come do a master class at Albright College. I think the students would really, really benefit from it. And we're really trying to grow the music program and grow the jazz department. So musicians like yourself, and you know, the fact that we're only 3 hours from New York